Hey guys, it's me with another care and propagation video, and in this episode we're doing the Streptocarpus section saintpaulia, most commonly known as the African violets. This is in the Gesneriaceae family, which contains around 150 genus and around 350 species. This particular section, which is what we commonly call African violets, have been hybridized like crazy. You can enjoy many different shapes, sizes, colors for both the leaves and also the flowers. And of course, they're all adapted to live in different kinds of environments. For the most part, they're quite forgiving, quite easy, although you do need to understand the requirements, which we're going to go through. And the care for these plants may be a little bit different depending on your environment. Just as a disclaimer, I live in Indonesia, and this is actually the same kind of latitude as the plant's original place of origin, which is Kenya and Tanzania. Now these guys are rainforest plants, but I have found that they actually love a little bit of a cooler temperature. They do thrive better when it's not sweltering hot in the Indonesian heat, and too much humidity can also cause them to decline. So this is a plant that can withstand a little bit of a lower humidity, if you know what I mean. Now this is also a plant that has very fuzzy leaves that are really fun to pat. They also flower beautifully both indoors and outdoors, so this is a wonderful indoor flowering plant. And as I mentioned earlier, there are many varieties and they flower differently. They have different shapes, colors of flowers that you can play with. And of course, there are a lot of wonderful African violet communities out there, and you can check out their collection if you want to learn more. But let me dive into the care really quickly. These guys do like bright indirect light, although I would say medium indirect light would also do them just fine. They do not like to be in direct sunlight. Their leaves can get bleached and turn yellow, and they would just not be happy. They will be like really sad looking. I've had this kind of outdoors in a bit of a direct sunlight situation before, and trust me, they look horrible. If you put them in lower light, they're also a little bit miserable because they will start putting out tiny little leaves with long petioles that outreach. And to be honest, this is not a good specimen. This has actually been a little bit neglected. As I've neglected a lot of these, because I have a few cuttings around the house for this plant that is growing, and they're just so easy that I never paid special attention to them. So in today's video, I'm going to be propagating them, and then I'm of course going to show you updates in the end. But anyways, I digress. So in terms of sunlight, bright indirect to medium light, you also want to give this a very fast draining potting medium, because they don't want to sit in water, especially in a high humidity climate and hot climate like mine. You do want to make sure that they are a little bit dry between watering, but I find that they don't like to be dry completely for too long. Now in the Western civilizations, as far as I know, where humidity is a little bit lower, you might not want to keep this plant too dry. You might want to keep the potting mix even slightly moist and evenly moist throughout. So some of the signs that you can see if you have overwatered this plant is that they will put out these yellow tips around the edge of the leaves that will spread, and these yellow tips are typically mushy, and you can tell that this plant is really trying to get rid of excess water. And the sign of underwatering would just be like a leaf that suddenly crisps up, turns brown, and then if you feel the leaves, it's just brown and crispy. So that's how you know you've underwatered it. I give this my general purpose potting media, but I've seen these guys grown in many different types of potting mix. They're absolutely resilient, but the best potting mix is the one that you propagated them in. They do not like to be repotted. So I'm going to show you exactly later how I propagate this plant. And then finally, with fertilizing, you don't really need to fertilize these heavily. They're not heavy feeders, and I just give them my balanced slow release fertilizer and they do just fine. In terms of pests, I've not had any pests in any of my African violets. They're quite resistant to pests in that way. So this is an easy house plant for beginners, and again, they do bloom indoors. They make really wonderful table decorations. If you put them in the middle of the dining table while it's in full bloom, it really cheers up the space a lot. And of course, for these guys, you definitely want to give them a nice cover pot so they look really beautiful, because a plastic pot like this will serve them no justice at all. They can be propagated in water or directly into soil, which we're going to get into right now. Alright, so I want to show you really quickly. First of all, they grow in a rosette pattern, and this is actually a little bit disturbed. You can tell it's uneven. So you want to try to give them light from up above to give them a beautiful rosette shape. Unlike this one has grown on the side of a window, so it's trying to face one way, if you see that, or the leaves are trying to face towards the light. So ideally, do not put these under a shelf. Where possible, give them top light. And if you need to face them against a window, it's wise to rotate them every, I don't know, 3 to 4, 5 days or so, which I don't do because I have so much things that I have to deal with. I have like 500 plants or more. But yeah, but as you can see here, if the apical dominance or apical bud has been compromised, they will put out all these shoots off the side so they can branch out. And actually, the best way to propagate is to wait for these to size up a bit, and you can just pluck them off and plant them. That is one way you can do it. But of course, we're not going to take the easy way. As you can see here, just another vine coming out in there. We're not going to take the easy way out today. We're going to do it, oh, this came right off, yellowing leaves. So we're going to do it sort of the difficult way, the more interesting way. And this is actually a little bit thirsty. It's a little bit, but I feel that leaves are firm, which is a good idea to propagate when the leaves are firm. So I do want to give this a bit of a watering. And I do water this lightly like this every day. That is my sort of my regime with this guy. Be mindful of your environment, and your care requirement is going to be very different depending on where you are. But these guys are very, very adaptive, and they're very, very forgiving. So the way that we would propagate them is to pick out a healthy leaf, such as this one here. It's just staring right at me. And then I'm just going to cut it off with a sterilized pair of scissors. Now we're going to do it two ways. We're going to do one in water. So I'm going to stick this right in a vessel of water. There you go. I'm going to pick another one. There you go. And then I'm going to just stick this in water. All right, that's done. It's going to be one short video for you guys. And I'm going to take another cutting. This leaf is a little bit damaged, but this petiole is actually a little bit too long. So let me explain the anatomy real quick. So you want, like, this is a pretty good length. I don't measure, but I just use my feelings. What's going to happen is that the roots are going to appear in the bottom, and then babies also going to appear in the bottom. This is just how they reproduce. So I'm going to stick this in a potting medium, and I don't want it to be too deep. I'm coming at an angle here, because if you go too deep, you'll bury the babies. The baby will have a hard time reaching out of the potting mix. I'm going to take one more, and this is a bit damaged, but I'm going to take it anyways. Now I'm going to put this in a place with like medium high humidity, and I need to be on top of the watering. These guys want to be kept moist, but let me show you how I water this. So 2 in water and 2 right in my general purpose potting mix. That's it for now. I'm just going to water it like that. Let the water seep in, and water it lightly every day. Now, if you want to put this in a higher humidity area, you don't want to let the soil be too moist, because you'll rot the plant very easily. But it's also a good idea if you have a more humid environment, because these will not lose too much moisture from the leaves. Higher humidity environment will encourage them to push out more roots. But in my case, I'm just putting them in this general area where it's like receiving like decent amount of light. It's got like 60 to 90% humidity, and just let it root. But again, I've also propagated this in a fully air-conditioned indoor environment with maybe about 60% humidity that's a bit cooler, and they do just fine. So different environments will require different kinds of watering regime, but be sure to give it either medium or bright and direct light. They do need that light to push out roots and new shoots. All right, and this is the parent plant. We're gonna see some of these probably grow a lot more, because as we cut off those large leaves, these baby leaves will have better access to light. So we might see these babies sprout in the update as well. See you guys in a few months. Welcome to a 6 weeks update. This is the parent plant where we made the cut. And look at that, some new fresh growth has appeared here. I have been on top of watering for this plant. It's living in very good bright indirect light up front, and it's in my air-conditioned room, so it gets really cool over here. It doesn't get hot and sweltery, and I think it's responding really well to that. These guys, they actually don't like it to be too hot and humid. They can rot rather easily. If you look in the middle of the screen, you'll see like baby leaves trying to emerge as well. I think it's branching out. I see multiple branches in there. So this is what happens when you propagate plants. They tend to branch out. Let's check out the water propagated ones. Look at that. It's got some roots coming out already, but I don't see any growth point or any new babies emerge from that yet. So I'm gonna give it more time. They're not the fastest to propagate, but look at that. Oh, satisfying to watch. Now the one in soil, I give it a tug, and it's quite snug in there. I don't want to lift the pot up because it's quite dense here, but it's snug in here, so it's probably rooted quite well. Welcome to a 2.5 months update. This is the one that we've grown in soil, and actually it's put out 2 rosettes. I don't know if you can see in there. And we lost one of the parent leaf, but this leaf is still hanging on, so it's already given me babies. And behind here we've got the parent plant. It is flowering profusely. It is so beautiful. It's growing outside actually, just living out in the elements, getting bright shade. And it just gets watered every day. The airflow is just so good that it can just get watered daily. But I really love the flowers on these. If you look closely at some of these flowers, I don't know if they're exhibiting that here and if you can see it on the screen, but they have a little bit of that silver glitter. They're very, very, very small, very, very fine glitter. So yeah, it's never gonna show up on camera, but if you see it with your naked eye, you'll definitely notice that. And you can see is how beautiful are those like yellow, I don't know what those are. I think they're producing pollen, but this is actually doing really well. And African violets are actually really, really beautiful. They flower indoors. I meant to trim that off actually sometime to prune this plant. But yeah, and one more thing, bad news, we lost the ones in the water propagation. I actually saw them rot off slowly, and I think attributed to maybe not getting enough light. It was under a shelf, and yeah, so that's that. But you can actually propagate it by water, trust me. But I guess if you look at my experiment here, they do really well with soil propagation as well. You can just take cuttings and literally just stick them in soil and you can produce more babies. I bet it will take another year for them to get from this size to that size. They're not the slowest growing, but they're not extremely fast either. But this is actually very satisfying. Look at all these blooms that are coming. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be enjoying this for a while. I might actually put this next to my work table so I can kind of look at it whenever I need a break from work. Thank you so much for watching this episode all the way to the very end. I hope that you've learned something out of this. If you haven't given African violets a try, do give it a try. If you live in temperate climates or subtropical climates, they might do well indoors for you. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but they actually do like slightly cooler air and good airflow. So the air-conditioned room is okay, and they don't need a ton of humidity to put out flowers and to grow for you. So I'm at Botanist on Instagram. Feel free to add me on Instagram and ask me if you have any questions about plant care and propagations. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you, Patreon members, for supporting the channel. Should you consider joining as a member, the Patreon link is Sean from Only Plants. It can also be found in this video description. I've started producing bonus contents for members. These include plant hauls, plant shopping, and mini bite-sized adventures. The same bonus contents will also be unlocked for you if you join to become a YouTube member of the channel. There is a monthly membership fee as small as a cup of coffee a month. Simply go to Only Plants channel page and click join. Your contributions help me grow the channel, do better content, and have a better quality of life. For that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart.